Welcome to the SportsCenter. Kevin Nagani here with you. We start with some breaking news out of the NFL, and it's a stunner. Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham report that 8-time Super Bowl champ Bill Belichick will not get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. Despite a record 6 Super Bowl wins as a head coach, Belichick received a call from the Hall saying he didn't have the necessary votes. According to sources, Spygate and Deflategate scandals factored into some of the voters' thinking. Belichick has the most playoff wins in NFL history and the second most total wins, only behind Hall of Famer Don Shula. Mike and Frank have much more in tonight's PTI bonus topic.
All right, Frank, what's your reaction to Bill Belichick not being a first-ballot Hall of Famer?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. The credentials are there. He won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach in New England, 2 defensive coordinator with the Giants. Kind of sounds similar to what happens in baseball with guys that are linked to steroids, cheating. Ooh. This probably has a little bit to do with it. The sports writers, whoever else is involved, the guys in the media are looking at it. We'll give them a little punishment for Spygate and Deflategate, because I think when you think Hall of Fame coach, Bill Belichick, you could put him up there with all the greats in the NFL. You'd think of him as a Hall of Fame.
Frank, I'm not going to disagree with a word of that, but let me do a little bit of inside baseball, having sat in that room as an elector for 10 years. And there are discussions that go on. I remember when people thought Joe Gibbs was going to come back, and he later did. They didn't want to vote for Joe Gibbs in real time the first year after he retired because people thought he may come back, and we don't think he should be eligible for that, even though at the time there was no real provision to prevent it.
Yep.
So, and a second thing about that's inside baseball in that room, there's some of the all-time greats that went in like 15 years later. Lynn Swann, I think, on a 14th ballot. The great Art Monk on a 12th or 13th ballot. And you're like sitting there going, wait a minute, why isn't this person in? And there were people in the room. It's not the Baseball Hall of Fame. First ballot doesn't mean the same thing in every sport or every election. So it used to make me nuts, but that was the nature of that room. So the pro football, and again, it's not the NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Means a little something else.
If he's media friendly, does he get in this year?
He's going to get in anyway. It just may not be this year. He's getting in.
I think
he's getting
credibility.
in.
It's Bill Belichick.
There you go with that New York baseball sensibility. There you go.
Well, he was a Giants assistant coach.
He's
a while
getting in.
That's it. We're done. Back to you.
Sorry, Bill.
Frank, Mike, thank you for much more. Senior NFL insider Dan Graziano joins us now. Graz, all right, some context. Belichick fell short of the 40 out of 50 votes needed to get into the Hall. What's your reaction to this story?
It's embarrassing. If I were a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting body, I'd be embarrassed about it, and I'd make it very clear that I was not one of the 11 plus who decided not to vote for him. I used to be a Baseball Hall of Fame voter. We took a lot of grief about that process, which is absolutely fairer and more sensible than this one. The Pro Football Hall of Fame voting process is inane and should be completely overhauled, and this has been true for a long time. Maybe this will prompt something of a change because, again, they should be embarrassed. There's no reason not to put Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame. You're going to tell me Spygate and Deflategate. This is a voting body that has for years insisted that it only focuses on what happened on the field. Are you going to hold Tom Brady out over Spygate and Deflategate too? Like, are you going to be consistent with that? And by the way, there's guys in there that have been suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, for gambling, for all kinds of things. So now, when it comes to Belichick, it matters, and it's never mattered before. I think it's a crock.
Certainly a statement was made, and for Bill Belichick, of course he's a Hall of Famer. It's just a matter of time. So maybe the case he's on to 2027. All right, wouldn't be inducted this summer. Seth Wickersham, one of the reporters who broke the story, joins us now on the phone. Seth, what did sources tell you about Belichick's reaction when he was informed this past weekend?
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, this is a complete stunner all the way around. And even though, you know, we've come to expect the unexpected when it comes to Belichick, I don't think anybody was expecting this. But Friday afternoon, he did get a call from the Hall of Fame telling him that he would not be an inductee for this year, that he fell short of the 40 requisite votes required to be inducted. And, you know, I think that it was kind of a courtesy call for him, you know, given his stature and given that he's a finalist. but I think that he was hurt. I think he was disappointed. And, you know, as we detail in the article, you know, he asked people, like, what does a guy have to do? 6 Super Bowls isn't enough, apparently.
The role of Spygate and Deflategate, is this just sending a message from what you've gathered from your sources and the reaction that you're going to have to wait a year because of that?
Yeah, well, we report Bill Polian being an advocate, you know, the former GM of the Colts, who, of course, was one of the Patriots' chief rivals during their dynastic run, you know, saying not in the deliberation room, but outside of it, that he thought that Belichick should have to wait a year because of, you know, what a big cheating scandal Spygate in particular was. I mean, remember, it was a long time ago, but it was 2007. They had been, you know, illegally filming signals, you know, for Belichick's entire run in New England prior to that. They were docked a first-round pick and fined, you know, significantly. And Robert Kraft had to personally lobby Roger Goodell to not suspend Bill Belichick. And, you know, I think that while the public has forgotten about that, people who were victims, perhaps, of that scandal have not. And I think that, according to our sources, you know, this was part of it.
Seth, what's been the reaction around the league to this news?
Well, you know, I try not to stay on X after I post a story, but at this point, you know, it's so overwhelming that I actually can't read what the reactions are. I don't think that the algorithm can quite support this volume of stuff that people are talking about, you know, about Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer despite 8 Super Bowl rings. But we've heard from a number of people around the league, executives, GMs, coaches who work with him, and there's people like Patrick Mahomes, to name one, who are posting online, you know, in just utter disbelief that Bill Belichick, second in all-time wins, you know, the greatest football coach, certainly in the Super Bowl era, and maybe of all time, will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Excellent work, of course, from you and Don. Seth Wickersham breaking the news here that on his first year of eligibility, joining us now on this breaking news, stunning news, your reaction to this about Bill Belichick not getting into the Hall in his first year of eligibility.
First off, kudos to Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham for the report. Amidst all this coaching news, this is the biggest bombshell of all today. This is a process where it is humans who are voting. It is not an algorithm. And the humans who voted, he got 40, they think, of the 50 votes. He needed to get at least 40 of the 50 votes to get into the next round and be in the Hall of Fame, and apparently did not get it. And from the many voters who I have been texting with and to the ones that were quoted and cited anonymously in that article, it seems like the sins or the sins of Spygate and Deflategate, and this was almost like a penance that Belichick's going to have to wait 1 year out. The irony is Patriots are in the Super Bowl, and it looks like Robert Kraft, who was his longtime owner and in recent months maybe antagonist, it looks like he's a finalist who might get in. It was thought that it was going to be Kraft and Belichick going in together in the same year while the Patriots are playing in the Super Bowl. Well, that's not going to be the case. Belichick got the news, and he's flabbergasted. He spoke on the record there in that article. And I think a lot of people on the outside looking in are just scratching our heads and saying, gosh, if the premise is can you write the history of the sport without this person's name in it? You mentioned Belichick. The answer is absolutely no. You cannot write the history of the NFL without Belichick's name in. The thought is he'll get in eventually, but he's going to have to wait a year because the voters and those who are in charge of the decision-making felt that he had to maybe sit 1 year out and watch from afar.
The reaction on social media, future Hall of Famers, Patrick Mahomes in disbelief, as well as J.J. Watt. J.J. tweeting, there's not a single world whatsoever in which Bill Belichick should not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Let's talk a little bit about Belichick's personal connection here to Canton, where the enshrinement would take place in the summer.
Yeah, and this is the part that's so wild, and I was tweeting about this, and Josh Norris, who's a good follow on Twitter, was chiming in as well. Of all the people connected to the NFL, there's no greater historian and lover of the history of football than Bill Belichick. And it's not just the history of the game. It's Canton itself. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He tells stories about when he was a young man, he would go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and explore their libraries, which are in the basement, which has just texts and texts and texts of football books, and he would devour them. And that when he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, it was a very often pilgrimage that he would make to Canton just to bask in the history of the sport. There might be no more, I guess, someone who reveres the Hall of Fame more than Bill Belichick. So the irony and the sick twist to all of this is, here is this man who has just got the biggest wealth of knowledge for pro football history and who has such an appreciation for the history of the sport and Canton itself. And of all the people who's going to not be able to go in as a first-year Hall of Fame candidate, it's Bill Belichick. It's almost a sick irony and a sick twist to all this. He's the one guy who has never dismissed the importance of the Hall of Fame and has always treasured it from afar.
Excellent context there, Peter. Thank you so much on this breaking. Reaction from the sports world has been swift and shocking. On X, Patrick Mahomes called it insane. Don't even understand how this could be possible. J.J. Watt said, this has to be some knockoff Hall of Fame or something. There's not a single world whatsoever in which Bill Belichick